Minsu sat in the quiet chair. The screen in front of him showed empty space. It was always empty space. The light from a distant star was just a tiny white dot. It did not change. This place was called Outpost K7. It was a small station at the very edge of human space. It was a lonely job. Most people did not want it. Minsu had asked for it. He was not a young man. His black hair had gray at the sides. His eyes often looked at something far away, something not in the room. He had been a soldier. He had fought in the war against the Terran Union. He had followed orders. He had done things that won him a medal. Now the medal was in a box. The memories were not in a box. They were in his head, every day. The outpost hummed. It was a soft, constant sound. It was the only sound. Minsu's job was to watch. He watched the scanners for any ships. He listened for any signals. For 3 Earth months there had been nothing. Nothing but stars and silence. He took a slow drink of cold tea. On the console next to his cup was a small flat picture. It showed a young girl with a bright smile. She was his daughter, Sumin. She lived with her mother on Mars. He saw her on video calls, but the screen made her look like a ghost. The picture was real. He touched its edge with one finger. This was why he was here. The quiet job paid well. The money went to Mars. Paid for Sumin's school. Paid for her safety. His silence here bought her a better life there. It was a simple trade. A sharp beep broke the quiet. Minsu's eyes snapped to the main screen. A yellow light flashed in a corner of the scanner grid. An object. It was not on any scheduled route. It was not sending any friendly signals. He put his tea down. His soldier's mind woke up, pushing the tired father aside. His fingers moved over the console. They were calm. They knew what to do. He tried to send a radio hail. Unknown vessel, this is Human Concord at Outpost K7. You are approaching a controlled border. Identify yourself and state your purpose. He sent the message. He waited. The only reply was static. The object got closer. The scanner drew a rough picture of it. It was a ship, but a small one. Smaller than a standard cargo pod. The shape was strange. Not human design. The scanner showed no energy weapon signatures. No shield readings. But it also showed serious damage. The back of the ship was blackened from heat. A part of it was torn open, like a wound. Unknown vessel, you are entering a quarantine zone. If you can hear me, change your course immediately. If you do not respond, I am authorized to take defensive action. More static. Then, a broken sound came through. It was not a voice. It was a digital scream, a distress beacon. It was a universal signal. Every spacefaring race knew it. It meant one thing, help me. Minsu sat back. His orders were very clear. If an unidentified, damaged, non-communicative ship entered the zone, he was to treat it as a possible threat. The rules said he could even destroy it if it came too close. The war had made everyone careful. Too careful. But the distress signal changed things. A little. Protocol said he should now attempt a physical inspection. Before calling it in. Before the collection authority was notified. The collection authority. Minsu's mouth became a thin line. Everyone knew about them. They were not soldiers. They were not doctors. They were cleaners. They came when there was a mess. An alien mess. They took things away, and those things were never seen again. His orders said to call them first for any biological contaminants. That was the word they used for living things that were not allowed. He looked at the picture of his daughter. He thought of her smile. He thought of the cold void outside, and the tiny, broken ship drifting in it. Calling for help with a deep breath, he made a choice. He would not call the authority. Not yet. He would follow the inspection protocol. Just the inspection. He stood up. His body ached a little. The old injuries from the war did not like the station's cold air. He walked to the equipment locker. He put on his heavy station suit. It was white and bulky. He sealed the front, checked the air supply, and put on his helmet. The world became the sound of his own breathing. The door to the main airlock opened with a hiss. He stepped inside. The door closed behind him. The air was pumped out. The outer door opened. Now there was only the stars, millions of them cold and bright. Below his feet was the metal walkway of the outpost. Ahead, floating in the dark, was the ship. It looked even worse in person. The damage was bad. A piece of the hull was gone. He could see inside. It was dark. He used the small thruster pack on his back to push off the walkway. He floated slowly toward the ship. His heart beat loudly in his ears. This was the most interesting thing that had happened in months. It was also the most dangerous. He landed softly on the torn metal of the ship's hull. He took a cutter tool from his belt. The metal was strange. It was lighter than human metal. He cut a neat hole around the damaged area, making a door he could fit through. The inside was black. He turned on the light on his helmet. The light swept over a small cabin. Everything was thrown about. There were containers open. A strange liquid was frozen on one wall. There was a mat on the floor, woven in a pattern he had never seen. This was not a warship. It looked like a home. A small, sad home that had been tossed in a storm. That he saw no one. He heard nothing but his breath. Then, a soft scrape, like metal on metal. His light swung to the side. Behind a fallen beam, in a shadowy corner, something moved. Minsu's hand went to the tool on his belt. But it was not a tool. It was a stunner, a weapon. He pulled it out. The blue light on its side glowed. "Show yourself," he said, his voice tight inside his helmet. He knew they could not understand him. Slowly, the shape in the corner uncurled. It was an alien. It looked female. She was thin, with long arms. Her skin was a pale, soft gray. She had large eyes. They were dark, but they caught his light and shone with a wet fear. She was hurt. One of her arms was held close to her body. She looked at the stunner in his hand. She looked at his sealed helmet. She did not attack. She did not speak. She just looked. And in that look, Minsu saw a terrible, tired sadness. It was a feeling he knew very well. Then, she moved her good hand. Not toward him. She pointed a thin, three-fingered hand back into the darkness of the ship. She made a soft, desperate sound. A word came through the speaker in his helmet. His suit's computer was trying to translate. The word was broken but clear. "Children." Minsu froze. The stunner felt suddenly heavy in his hand. He was not pointing it at a soldier or a spy or a threat. He was pointing it at a mother. The word hung in the air between them. Children. For a long moment nothing moved. Minsu did not lower the stunner. His training screamed at him. This could be a trick. A way to make him feel safe. He had seen tricks before in the war. They often worked. But the alien female did not move. She just kept her large, shining eyes on him. Her hand, still pointing into the dark, trembled. It was not an act. The fear was too real. It was the same fear he had seen in human faces when their homes fell. Slowly, carefully, Minsu lowered the weapon. He did not put it away. He held it by his side. He took a small step back to give her space. He looked where her finger pointed. Past the broken beam, deeper into the ship. His helmet light cut through the gloom. He saw more scattered things. A small, ripped cloth. A broken cup. But no movement. He had to be sure. He looked back at her. He made a gesture with his free hand. He pointed to his own eyes, then to the darkness. "Show me." She understood. She moved slowly, wincing as she tried to stand. Her injury was bad. Minsu hesitated, then stepped forward. He offered his arm not to hold her, but as a support. She looked at his gloved hand, then at his face through the helmet. After a second, she leaned her good shoulder against his arm. Her weight was light, like a bird's. Together, they moved past the beam. The ship was small. There were only two other rooms. One was a control room, all the screens dark and dead. The other was a sleeping space. It was there, in the sleeping space, that she stopped. She pointed to a section of the wall. It looked smooth and solid, but she tapped a specific spot with her thin finger. A small, hidden door slid open with a side. It was not a room. It was a compartment, a storage space, meant for keeping things safe during travel. It was very small and very dark. Min-soo bent down. He shone his light inside. Two pairs of huge, terrified eyes looked back. They were smaller versions of their mother. One was quite little, curled into a ball. The other was slightly bigger, holding the small one tight. They were shivering. Not just from fear, he realized. The ship's heat was gone. It was freezing in here. The bigger child made a low, chirping sound of fear and held the little one tighter. Their mother made a soft, calming sound in return. The sound was full of pain and love. Min-soo pulled back. His mind was racing. This changed everything. This was not a military ship. It was a lifeboat, a broken lifeboat with a family inside. His orders were clear. Find unauthorized life. Report it immediately. Do not engage. Do not bring biological contaminants into the station. Wait for the collection authority. He looked at the mother, Kayla. He saw the desperate hope in her eyes now. She had shown him her greatest secret, her greatest treasure. She was trusting him with it. He looked at the children in the hole in the wall. They were just children. Cold and scared. He thought of the collection authority. Their clean, white ships. Their polite, empty voices. They would take this family. They would put them in containers. He did not know where they would go. No one ever did. The war had made rules about non-contracted species. The rules were not kind. Then, without wanting to, he thought of Sumin. His daughter's picture was back on his console. What if it was her? What if she was cold and scared in a broken ship, and a stranger in a helmet found her? What would he want that stranger to do? Min-soo let out a long breath. It fogged the inside of his helmet for a second. He made a decision. It was not a soldier's decision. It was a father's. He put his stunner back on his belt. He held up both hands, showing they were empty. He pointed to himself, then back toward the direction of the airlock. He then pointed to her and to the children and made a lifting motion. Come with me. Her eyes widened. She did not understand the gesture. Or maybe she understood too well, and was afraid of what it meant. Min-soo needed to show her. He turned to the hidden compartment. He moved very slowly. He reached a hand toward the bigger child. The child flinched back. Min-soo stopped. He looked at the mother. He nodded to her, urging her to help. Kayla made a soft sound. She spoke to the children. Her voice was gentle, even though it was full of pain. The bigger child looked from her to Min-soo. Slowly, carefully, the child pushed the little one toward the opening. Min-soo did not grab. He simply put his arms under the small, shivering form. The little one was light, almost nothing. The skin was cool. It did not fight. It just stared at him with those enormous, dark eyes. He turned and carefully carried the child out of the broken ship, back into the open airlock of the station. He laid the child down on the floor out of the way. Then he went back. He did the same for the bigger child. This one watched him the whole time, tense and ready to run. But it came. Finally, he went back for Kayla. She could not walk well. He had to help her. He put her arm over his shoulders and half carried her across the short space between the ships. Her steps were weak. When they were all inside the outpost's airlock, he closed the outer door. The sound was final. They were now inside human space. He turned to look at them. The two children huddled close to their mother. They all looked at the large, strange human in the big white suit. They were waiting. They had no choice. Min-soo knew his next problem. Captain Ji-yeon. He had to tell her. And he had to decide what to say. He reached up and unlocked his helmet. There was a hiss of air. He took the helmet off. The air in the lock was cold and smelled of metal. He looked at the alien family with his own eyes. Not through a visor. He saw them see his face. A human face. Tired, older, with lines of worry. He gave them what he hoped was a calm, kind look. Then he turned to the comm panel on the wall. He pressed the button to speak to the control room. His voice was steady when he spoke. It was the voice of a soldier reporting. Captain Ji-yeon, this is Min-soo. I've completed the inspection. I found survivors. 1 adult female, 2 juveniles. They are non-aggressive and in need of medical aid. I am requesting permission to bring them into the secondary medical bay for assessment. Under the humanitarian clause. He let go of the button. In the silent airlock, they all waited for the answer. The silence after his message felt heavy. In the quiet airlock, the only sounds were the hum of the station and the soft, frightened breaths of the alien children. Min-Soo kept his eyes on the comm panel, waiting for the red light to turn green. The alien female, Kayla, watched him. Her large eyes moved from his face to the panel, understanding that something important was happening. A sharp crackle came from the speaker. Then a voice. It was Captain Ji-Yun. Her tone was calm, but it had an edge to it, like a knife under a cloth. Min-Soo, confirm your status. No hostiles. No hostiles, Captain, Min-Soo said, his voice firm. 1 injured adult. 2 juveniles. No weapons observed. The vessel is dead. There was another pause. He could almost hear her thinking. You used the term humanitarian clause. Be very sure, Min-Soo. That is a serious designation. It invites oversight. I am sure, he said. They are civilians. They are freezing. The youngest can't stop shivering. Another silence. This one was longer. Do not bring them into the main habitat, Ji-Yun said finally. Her words were precise. You know the protocols for potential biological contaminants. Take them to the old medical bay in Sector C. It has been decommissioned, but the basic seal still works. Use that. Do not pass through any primary corridors. Use the maintenance tunnel from Airlock 3. Do you understand? Sector C. It was a forgotten part of the station. It was where broken things were stored. It was off the main grid. Isolated. I understand, Min-Soo said. Good, Ji-Yun said. Assess their medical state. Only basic aid. Do not offer food or water from our stocks until I have run a compatibility scan. I will inform command of a derelict vessel. I will not mention life signs yet. We will see what they say. Ji-Yun out. The light on the panel went dark. Min-Soo let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. She had given him a path. A narrow, dangerous path, but a path. She had not said to call the collection authority. Not yet. He turned to the family. They were all looking at him. He pointed to himself. Min-Soo, he said slowly. He pointed at Kayla. She watched him, her head tilted. He waited. After a moment, she touched her own chest. Her voice was a soft whisper.
Kayla.
He nodded. He pointed to the children. She understood. She touched the smaller one. Toli. Then the bigger one. Nomi. Min-Soo nodded again. He gave Toli and Nomi a small, careful smile. They did not smile back. They just stared. He had to move them. He pointed to the inner airlock door, then made a walking motion with his fingers. Kayla watched, then nodded slowly. She tried to stand, but her leg gave way. She winced, a sharp hiss of air escaping her. Min-Soo moved quickly. He put his helmet down and bent beside her. He pointed to her injured leg, then to himself, then toward the door. I will help you. She hesitated, then nodded again. He helped her up, letting her lean on him. He looked at Nomi and pointed to Toli, then to the door. Nomi seemed to understand. The older child took Toli's small hand tightly. The journey was slow. The maintenance tunnel was not made for people. It was a tight, gray metal tube with dim lights. Pipes ran along the walls. It was cold. Toli began to make a soft, whimpering sound. Nomi pulled the little one closer. Min-Soo felt a knot in his stomach. He was bringing them from one cold, broken place to another. But this one had air. And maybe a little safety. They reached a heavy door marked with a faded C. Min-Soo tapped in a code. The door opened with a groan. The old medical bay was a ghost room. A thin layer of dust covered everything. 2 old examination beds. A broken monitor on the wall. A storage cabinet. But it was a room with 4 walls and a door that closed. He helped Kayla sit on one of the beds. She was shaking now, from pain or cold or both. He went to the cabinet. He found some old but clean thermal blankets. He brought 3 of them. He handed one to Nomi, who took it warily. He gave one to Kayla. She wrapped it around herself and Toli, pulling her youngest clothes. The third blanket he spread on the other bed. He pointed to Nomi, then to the bed. For you. Nomi looked at Kayla. Kayla gave a small nod. Nomi climbed onto the bed and wrapped up in the blanket, watching Minsu every second. Minsu went back to the cabinet. He found an old first aid kit. It was basic, but it had things. Clean cloth, disinfectant spray meant for human skin. He showed the spray to Kayla, then pointed to her injured leg. She pulled the blanket back. The injury was bad. A deep cut or maybe a burn on her thigh. The skin around it was an angry purple. Minsu knelt. He held up the spray. "This will help," he said softly, knowing she couldn't understand. "It will clean it." He sprayed a little on his own glove first, to show it was not a weapon. Then very gently he cleaned the wound. Kayla flinched, but she did not pull away. She made a low, singing sound to Toli, who was peeking out from the blanket. When he was done, he bandaged the wound with clean cloth. It was not perfect, but it was better. He sat back on his heels. They were all looking at him. The fear in their eyes was still there, but it was mixing with something else. Confusion. A tiny, fragile thread of trust. He had to tell Jian more. He stood up and walked to the old comm unit on the wall. It was a direct line to the control room. He pressed the button. "Captain, they are secured in Sector C. The adult female has a significant leg injury. I have administered basic first aid. The children appear physically unharmed, but are suffering from exposure. They need warmth." Jian's voice came back, quieter now. "Understood. I have run the initial scans. Their ship's origin is unclear. No known weapons traces. Their life signs are stressed, but stable. Minsu." Her voice changed. It became more direct. "Command has replied. They have logged the derelict. They want a full debris scan in 6 hours. They did not ask about life signs. Do you know what that means?" Minsu knew. It meant Command did not want to know. If they knew, they would have to act. This way, they could pretend. "It means we have a little time," Minsu said. "It means we have a problem," Jian corrected him. "What is your plan?" "They cannot stay in Sector C. And I cannot hide them from the weekly supply scan in 48 hours. Minsu looked at the family. Kayla was resting her head against the wall, her eyes closed, one hand stroking Toli's head. Nomi was still watching him, a small gray face in a nest of gray blanket. "I don't have a plan yet," Minsu said honestly. "But sending them to the collection is not an option." He heard Jian sigh over the comms. It was a tired sound. "I know," she said simply. "For now, keep them warm. I will see what I can find in the old databases. Maybe their language, maybe where they came from." Jian out. The comm went silent again. Minsu turned back to the room. Nomi was still watching him. The child's large, dark eyes were full of a question he could not understand. He went to the heating controls on the wall. He turned them on. A slow, warm air began to flow from a vent in the ceiling. He pulled up a chair and sat down, not too close. He wanted them to see he was not a threat. He was just a man, a tired man, in a quiet room, with 3 lost souls, outside, in the infinite dark. The stars continued to burn, cold and uncaring. But in this small, dusty room, for the first time in a long time, Minsu did not feel completely alone. Time moved slowly in the old medical bay. The warm air from the vent began to fight the deep cold. Minsu sat in his chair, watching. The children, Toli and Nomi, slowly stopped shivering. They were still wrapped in their blankets, but their eyes were more alert. They watched Minsu, but the sharp edge of terror was gone. Now it was a deep, careful curiosity. Kayla's eyes were closed, but Minsu could tell she was not sleeping. Her face was tight with pain. Her hand never stopped moving, gently stroking Toli's back. It was a mother's habit. It was the same way Minsu had rubbed Sumin's back when she was small and had a fever. He stood up quietly. He walked to the storage cabinet again. He knew there was nothing here that was safe for them to eat. Human food could be poison to an alien body. But there had to be something. At the very back of a shelf, he found a few old packets of sterile water. They were for cleaning wounds, not for drinking. But the water was pure. It had no additives. He took one packet. He also found a small, clean bowl. He brought them to his chair. He made sure they could all see him. He opened the packet and poured the clear water into the bowl. He held it up, showing it. Then, he dipped his own finger in the water and touched it to his lips. He looked at Kayla. Her eyes were open now, watching him. He held the bowl out toward her, slowly. She stared at the bowl, then at him. She said something soft to Nomi. Nomi sat up a little straighter, watching closely. Kayla reached out a thin, three-fingered hand. She took the bowl. She sniffed the water. Then, she dipped the tip of one finger in, just as Minsu had done. She touched her finger to a spot near her mouth. She waited. A moment passed. Nothing happened. She gave a small nod. She held the bowl for Toli first. The little one drank in small, careful sips. Then Nomi drank. Finally, Kayla drank. She drank slowly, as if each sip was precious. When the bowl was empty, she held it in her lap. She looked at Minsu. She said a word. It sounded like, Senna. She touched her own chest, then his, then the empty bowl. Thank you. Minsu gave a small, tired smile. He nodded. He needed to communicate more. He needed to know. He pointed at her, then pointed upward, toward the ceiling, toward space. He made a flying motion with his hand, then a crashing motion. What happened? She frowned. She did not understand. Minsu thought. He looked around the room. His eyes landed on the old, broken monitor on the wall. He pointed to it. Then he pointed at her, and made a sweeping motion with his arm, as if showing a big picture. Show me. Her eyes followed his hand. Understanding dawned. She looked at the monitor, then back at him. She shook her head slowly and pointed to the broken screen. It was dead. But Minsu had an idea. He stood up and walked to the comm unit. He pressed the button. Captain, can you hear me? I hear you, Ji-Yun's voice came back. The adult's name is Kayla. She is stable. The children are stable. Captain, is there any way to get a portable screen down here? Something with a basic drawing program? I think she might be able to tell us what happened if she can draw it. There was a pause. A drawing program? That's unconventional, Minsu. We need to know who they are, he said, his voice low. If they are running from someone, we need to know who. It changes things. Ji-Yun was quiet for a long moment. There is an old datapad in my quarters. It has a child's drawing game on it. My niece used it when she visited. A long time ago. I can bring it, but I must be quick. The system logs all movement. Thank you, Minsu said. He went back to his chair. He waited. Kayla and the children watched him. The silence was not comfortable, but it was not hostile. It was the silence of people waiting for the next problem. After about 10 minutes, a soft knock came at the door. Pattern. 2 taps, a pause, 3 taps. It was Ji-Yun's signal. Minsu opened the door. Captain Ji-Yun stood there. She was a tall woman with sharp features and short black hair. Her eyes immediately went past Minsu into the room. She saw Kayla on the bed. The children huddled close. Her face did not change, but her shoulders tensed for a second. She handed Minsu a small, flat datapad. It was an old model with a bright pink protective case. The battery is low, but it works. The drawing app is open. Thank you, Captain, Minsu said. Ji-Yun's eyes met his. This is a big risk, Minsu. For both of us. I know, he said. She nodded once, then turned and disappeared back down the maintenance tunnel. The door closed. Minsu brought the pad to Kayla. He turned it on. The screen glowed with a soft light. It showed a blank white space, with simple color options at the bottom. He held it out to her. He pointed to the screen, then to her, then made the sweeping show me motion again. This time she understood. She took the pad carefully, as if it was made of glass. She stared at the glowing screen, fascinated. Her fingers touched the surface. A bright blue line appeared where her finger moved. She looked up at Minsu, her eyes wide with surprise. He nodded, encouraging her. Slowly, She began to draw. Her movements were not those of a child. They were careful and sad. She drew a planet. It was a simple circle. Around it, she drew other, smaller circles. Homes, maybe. Then her finger moved faster. She drew lines crossing the planet. Lines of fire. She drew ships above the planet. They were not detailed, but they had a sharp, angry shape to them. She pointed to the angry ships, then to herself and her children. She made a fleeing motion with her hand. Then she drew her own ship, a small, smooth shape. She drew the angry ships chasing it. She drew an explosion near her ship's tail. The damage. Finally, she drew the big, blocky shape of Outpost K7. She pointed to it, then to Minsu. He understood. Conflict. A lost home. A flight. Pursuit. Damage. Drifting until they were found. She was not a soldier. She was a refugee. Kayla put the datapad down. She looked exhausted. She had told her story without a single word he knew. Minsu picked up the pad. He looked at the simple, sad drawings. He saw the fear in the lines. He knew the story. He had seen it before. On different worlds, with different faces. It was always the same. He felt a heavy weight on his heart. He could not send them back to that. He could not give them to the collection authority, which might send them back to that, or worse. He had no ship to give them. No safe place to send them. But as he looked at Kayla, at Toli and Nomi sleeping now, he knew one thing for certain. His duty was no longer to the rules of a distant command. His duty was right here in this dusty room, to protect these lives, as he had not been able to protect others a long time ago. The problem was immense, but for the first time since the war, his purpose was clear. The night cycle of the station began. The lights in the medical bay dimmed to a soft, blue glow. Kayla and the children slept, a tangle of gray limbs and thermal blankets. Minsu did not sleep. He sat in his chair, the pink datapad in his hands. He looked at her drawings again and again. A home. Broken. Escape. A chase. He knew the shape of the chasing ships. Not in detail, but in feeling. They were the kind used by factions in the border wars. Mercenaries. Raiders. The kind who did not take prisoners, only plunder. If they were still looking for Kayla's family, it was not for a ransom. It was to silence them. He put the pad down and rubbed his eyes. The problem was a knot with no loose ends. He had no ship to give them. The outpost had only the one main shuttle, and it needed command codes to activate. He could not hide them forever. Ji-yun was right. The automated system scans would find life signs in Sector C within 2 days. And Command had ordered a debris scan of the alien ship in just a few hours. That scan might find clues about survivors. A soft sound made him look up. Nomi was awake. The older child was sitting up on the bed, watching him. The big, dark eyes were solemn. Minsu gave a small, tired smile. He picked up the datapad again. He opened a new, blank drawing page. He drew a simple stick figure of himself. He pointed to it, then to his own chest. Then he drew a second, smaller stick figure with a skirt. He pointed to it, then toward the control room and said, Ji-yun. He was trying to show they were not alone. Nomi watched, unblinking. Then, Minsu drew a boxy shuttle. He pointed to it, then pointed upward. He then drew a sad face over the shuttle and shook his head. No ship. He wasn't sure if the child understood. Nomi just stared at the drawing. Minsu sighed. He put the pad aside. He stood up and walked to the small viewing port in the door. It showed only the empty, dim maintenance tunnel. He felt trapped. He was used to being alone. But this was different. Now, his solitude held the lives of others. The comm unit hissed softly. Minsu. It was Ji-yun's voice. A whisper from the speaker. He walked over and pressed the button. I'm here. The debris scan team is automated. It launches in 4 hours. It will sweep the alien ship and the immediate space. If it finds biological traces, hair, skin cells, anything, it will flag the report. The report goes directly to Command. And Command will absolutely send the collection authority then. For hours. The weight on his shoulders grew heavier. Is there any way to stop the scan? He asked, already knowing the answer. No. It is a core protocol. But Jian paused. The scan is looking for traces outside the station. It does not scan the station itself unless ordered. Min-Su understood. So we need to make sure there are no traces to find. Exactly. Before the scan drone launches, someone needs to go back to that ship. Quick, clean sweep. Remove any personal items. Anything that would confirm life was recently there. It was risky. It meant going outside again. It meant tampering with an official investigation. I'll do it, Min-Su said. There was no one else. Be fast, Jian said. And be careful. I will monitor from here. If I see any other traffic on the long-range scanners, I will warn you. Min-Su turned from the comm. He saw Nomi was still watching him. Kayla was now awake too, her eyes open, listening to the human voices she could not understand. Min-Su moved to the equipment locker in the corner of the medical bay. His station suit was there. He began to put it on. Kayla made a soft, questioning sound. She sat up, wincing at the pain in her leg. Min-Su went to her. He pointed to himself, then to the door, then made a motion like flying a ship. He then made a sweeping motion with his hands like cleaning. I am going to clean. Her eyes widened with fear. She shook her head. She pointed to him, then to the drawings on the datapad, specifically the angry ships. She was afraid the bad ones were out there. It's okay, Min-Su said softly, though she couldn't understand. I will be quick. I am just cleaning. To keep you safe. He finished sealing his suit. He put on his helmet. The world shrank to the sound of his breathing. He gave Kayla what he hoped was a confident nod. Then he looked at Nomi. The child was standing now, holding the blanket tight. Min-Su raised a gloved hand in a small wave that he opened the door and stepped into the maintenance tunnel. He moved quickly this time, his mind focused on the task. He reached airlock 3, went through the procedure and was outside. The stars were brutally bright. The derelict alien ship hung where he had left it, a dark scar against the Milky Way. He pushed off toward it. Inside the ship, everything was as he left it, only colder. The silence was total. He turned on his suit's bright work light. He started in the sleeping area. He found the small, ripped cloth he had seen earlier. He put it in a disposal bag on his suit. He found the broken cup. He bagged it. He was methodical, moving from room to room, collecting every small sign that children had lived here. Piece of a toy. A food wrapper made of strange material. He saved the main cabin for last. The woven mat was there. He rolled it up. It was then that his light caught something under where the mat had been. A small, flat object. It was like a locket, made of a warm, polished wood. He picked it up. It opened. Inside were tiny, perfect carvings of 4 faces.
Koela.
Nomi, Toli, and an adult male with a gentle expression. A father. A family. Min-Su's throat tightened. He closed the locket carefully and placed it in a separate, secure pocket on his suit. This was not trash to be disposed of. This was a memory to be returned. He did one final sweep. The ship was now just a cold, empty shell. A story with all the pages ripped out. Min-Su. Jian's voice was tense in his helmet. Finish up. I'm reading a energy signature at the extreme edge of the scanner. It's faint, but it's not one of ours. It's moving in a search pattern. The pursuers. They were still looking. Understood. Returning now, Min-Su said. He pushed off from the derelict one last time, the bag of evidence in his hand. Behind him, the empty ship began to drift slowly, turning in the silent void, its story officially over. Ahead, the outpost waited, a tiny shell of light holding a desperate secret. Min-Su moved through the maintenance tunnel as fast as his bulky suit would allow. The bag of evidence felt heavy in his hand, not from weight, but from meaning. He had erased their past from the void. Now he had to secure their future. And he had no idea how. He entered the medical bay, sealed the door behind him, and took off his helmet. The air felt warm and still. Kayla and the children were all awake, sitting together on one bed. Their eyes locked onto him the moment he entered. They saw the bag. He set the bag down in a corner. Then he reached into the secure pocket on his suit. He pulled out the wooden locket. He walked over to Kayla and held it out to her on his open palm. Her reaction was immediate. A soft gasp escaped her. Her long fingers trembled as she took the locket. She clutched it to her chest, her eyes closing for a long moment. When she opened them, they shone with a film of wetness. She looked at Min-soo and said the word again, stronger this time. Senna. Thank you. It was filled with a grief and a gratitude so deep it needed no translation. He nodded. Then his face grew serious. He had to make them understand the new danger. He picked up the datapad. On a new screen, he drew the angry ships from her drawing. Then he drew a question mark. He pointed to the question mark, then pointed outward, to space. Kayla's face paled. She understood. She pulled Toli and Nomi closer. She spoke to them in a low, urgent voice. Nomi's eyes grew wide. Min-soo went to the comm unit.
Year on.
Status on the contact. It's holding position at the edge of our sensor range. Her voice came back, tight with tension. It's not approaching. It's just watching. It's a hunter's posture. They're waiting for a sign. A sign we almost gave them, Min-soo said quietly. He had cleaned the ship just in time. The automated scan drone launches in 90 minutes, Ji-yeon said. Once it completes its report of an empty derelict, that might satisfy them. They might leave. Or, Min-soo said, they might get suspicious about where the occupants went, and they might come closer to look. Neither of them spoke the worst thought. If the hunters decided to hail the outpost or worse, demand to board, there was nothing they could do. Outpost K-7 was a watchpost, not a fortress. We can't wait for them to decide, Min-soo said, his mind racing. We need to get the family off this station. Now. And go where? Ji-yeon's voice was sharp with frustration. The main shuttle is locked. Even if I could hack the codes, its launch would be seen by everyone, including that ship out there. It's a bright signal saying, here they are. Min-soo paced the small room. His eyes scanned the dusty cabinets, the old equipment. There had to be something. He was a soldier used to thinking of weapons and armor. But now he needed an escape. His eyes landed on a small, faded schematic stuck to the wall. It was a map of Outpost K-7. His gaze traced the lines. Main habitat, control center, docking port.
Maintenance sa sectors.
Hangar B. Hangar B was marked with a small, red X. The notation underneath said, decommissioned, storage. Captain, Min-soo said, his voice suddenly calm. Hangar B. What is in there? There was a long silence from Ji-yeon. When she spoke, her voice was different, thoughtful. Hangar B. It was used for construction pods during the station's build. Small, single-use vessels for external repairs. They were all supposed to be scrapped. But what? But the paperwork was never finished. I remember now. One pod was left. It was kept as a museum piece, a relic of the station's construction. It's ancient. Its systems are 50 years old. Does it fly? Min-soo asked, his heart beating faster. In theory, its core systems were maintained until 5 years ago. It has a basic jump drive, a short-range one. It was used to train cadets on antique systems. But Min-soo, it has no registered flight plan, no modern transponder. If you launch it, it will look like space junk or a sensor ghost. A ghost. That was exactly what they needed. Can you get me the access codes? He asked. I think so. They would be in the historical archive, not the secure system. He could hear her typing. But where would you go? That pod can't jump far. Maybe one short burst. It would leave you adrift. Min-soo looked at the family. At Kayla holding her locket. At the children's trusting, frightened faces. Anywhere is better than here if those hunters come knocking. We just need to get out of their sight. Then we can figure out the rest. It's a huge risk, Ji-yeon said. That pod is a tin can. One micrometeorite. Staying here is a bigger risk. Min-soo interrupted gently. Please, Captain, get the codes. A pause. Understood. I'll send them to the datapad. Give me 10 minutes. And Min-soo, you'll have to move them again. Through the tunnels to Hangar B. It's on the opposite side of the station. Minsu turned to face the room. Kayla was watching him, sensing the change in his tone. He picked up the datapad. He drew a very simple picture. The outpost, then a small pod leaving it. He pointed to the pod, then to her and the children, then to himself. Her eyes widened. She pointed at the pod, then at the angry ships on her earlier drawing. A question on her face. Minsu shook his head. He drew the pod jumping away in a dotted line. Then he drew the angry ships with a question mark over the outpost. He was trying to say the pod would be hidden. A ghost. She looked at the drawing for a long time. She looked at her children. Then she looked back at Minsu and gave a single, slow nod. She trusted him. The datapad chimed. A string of numbers and letters appeared on the screen. The access code for Hangar B.IT was time to go. The journey across the station was a silent, hurried dream. Minsu helped Kayla walk. Nomi held Toli's hand tightly, the little one stumbling but brave. They moved through the gray maintenance tunnels, their footsteps echoing softly. The station felt like a giant, sleeping beast around them. They reached a heavy door marked with a faded B. Minsu entered the code from the datapad. The door slid open with a groan of protest. Hangar B was a tomb for old machines. It was dark and smelled of cold metal and oil. In the center, under a single dim work light, sat the pod.it. Was small and boxy, shaped like an old-fashioned life pod. Its white paint was yellowed and chipped. A round window on its front looked like a dark, blind eye. It was not a ship for heroes. It was a last resort. Minsu helped Kayla and the children up the short ladder and through the narrow hatch. Inside, it was even smaller. Four worn seats were crammed together. Old control panels, covered in dust, lined the front. The children squeezed into two seats, their eyes huge in the gloom. Kayla lowered herself into the third seat with a sigh of pain. Minsu took the pilot's seat. He brushed dust from the main console. He pressed the power sequence Jian had sent. For a terrible moment, nothing happened. Then, with a sputter and a deep hum, lights flickered on across the panels. The pod was alive. A small comm screen glowed to life. Jian's face appeared. She looked tense. The scan drone has launched. It's doing its sweep. The unknown ship is still holding position. You need to go now, before the drone finishes and draws their full attention. Understood, Minsu said. His fingers moved over the old controls, running the pre-flight checks. The systems were green. I've programmed the only safe jump coordinate I could find, Jian said. It's a patch of empty space near a dead star. No traffic. No calenis. You'll be alone. The pod's beacon will be off. You will be invisible. Thank you, Captain, Minsu said. He meant it for everything. Jian gave a tight nod. Good luck, Minsu. Her screen went dark. Minsu turned to his passengers. Kayla was watching him, her hand on Toli's knee. Nomi stared at the stars through the round window. He reached over and gently pulled safety straps over Kayla. Then the children. They did not resist. He fastened his own. He pressed the controls to open the outer hangar door. A crack appeared in the station's hull, growing wider until it showed the infinite, star-filled black. The silence of space pressed against the pod. With a gentle touch, Minsu fired the thrusters. The pod lifted from the deck and floated out of the hangar. They were free of the station. It sat behind them, a small, bright puzzle box in the dark. He turned the pod away from the direction of the hunter ship. He pushed the thrusters to a low, steady burn. They moved away, slow and silent. Minutes passed. The outpost shrank to a bright dot, then vanished among the stars. They were utterly alone. Minsu's hand hovered over the jump drive initiator. This was the point of no return. Once they jumped, they were ghosts. He looked at Kayla. She met his gaze. He saw no fear in her eyes now, only a deep, weary resolve. She nodded once. Minsu pressed the button. There was no great sound. The stars outside the window blurred into streaks of white light. The pod shuddered violently for a few seconds. Then, stillness. The window showed a new view. Empty space. A dull, Red dead star glowed faintly in the distance. There was nothing else. No jeeps, no stations, just quiet and dark. They had made it. The tension in the tiny cabin broke like a dam. Kayla slumped in her seat, her body going limp with relief. She began to make a soft, singing sound. It was not a song of joy, but of release. A song for survival. Nomi looked from the window to Minsu. The child's face was unreadable for a moment. Then, very slowly, Nomi reached out a small, three-fingered hand and placed it on Minsu's arm that rested on the console. It was a light touch, warm through the fabric of his suit. Minsu looked down at the small gray hand, then up at Nomi's face. The child did not smile, but the eyes, those huge dark eyes, held a new feeling. Not fear, not even just thanks. It was recognition. They were in this together now. Kayla finished her song. She turned to Minsu. She spoke a few soft words. The computer in the pod's dashboard, a simpler version of his suits, flickered. A translated phrase appeared on a tiny screen. The danger is behind. The danger ahead is unknown. But we are not alone. Minsu read the words. He looked at this strange family from a lost world. He had saved them, but he had also saved a part of himself he thought was gone. The part that remembered what was right, not just what was ordered. He had no plan. They had little food, no destination, and only an ancient pod for shelter. The future was a vast, empty question. But in that moment, it was enough. They were alive. They were free. He reached out and placed his own hand over Nomi's small one on his arm. He gave Kayla a slow, sure nod. Outside the pod, the dead star's faint light touched the metal hull, a silent witness. Inside, in the quiet hum of old machinery, for beings, veteran, mother, child, and child, shared the warmth of their breath in the dark. They were no longer human and alien. They were simply survivors, holding on together as their small, brave pod drifted into the unknown.